Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DEC Institute's next episode of Best Practices of Blockchain and Crypto Asset Professionals. My name is Shraz Ahmed, and I'm incredibly happy to be here today to speak with Tara Annison, Head of Technical Crypto Advisory of Elliptic. Welcome, Tara.
Thanks for having me.
My great pleasure. So to give a little bit of context of our discussion, all of this revolves around the DEC Institute's Charter Holder Program for professionals entering and working in blockchain, crypto, and the digital asset space to prove their knowledge and expertise to the likes of clients, recruiters, as well as to belong to a community of like-minded professionals working in the space. And so the purpose of today's interview is to get some insights into the secret practices of a blockchain leader, such as yourself, so that our charter holder candidates can get a feeling of what it means to become an industry pioneer. First question here, for you, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur in the Web3 space?
So I think for me, being an entrepreneur in the Web3 space is around having a slightly different mentality, maybe than other industries. Like if you compare it to traditional banking, the Web3 space moves at 1,000 miles an hour. You can have, you go to bed on a Friday, and by the time you wake up on Monday, there's a whole other sub-industry that's being created over the weekend. So you have to be willing to move at that pace, learn at that pace, be flexible to change. If you kind of come at it saying, this is what I know and I'm going to just focus on this, then you're going to miss, whole developments in the space. So you have to certainly maintain kind of flexibility, open-mindedness. And I think a big one is an understanding to learn. Like you need to have that learning mentality of, I don't know that thing yet, but I'm going to try and find out about it. And that doesn't mean you have to be like the world's greatest expert. I can talk about yield farming and liquidity and all that kind of stuff in DeFi, but I'm certainly not an absolute expert in how that's built from a smart contract level up. But you need to be aware of it. You need to have like an interest in it and see where it's going. So I think that learning mindset is absolutely crucial if you're in Web3. I think it's also important as well to have that open-mindedness of the people in Web3. Like it is the kind of convergence of maths and computer science. And so it can be a little bit male-dominated still. Things are starting to change, but you don't have the typical, oh, this person is older, therefore they're wiser. You've got people who've been in crypto since, the very beginnings with Bitcoin in 2008, and they know more than someone who could be 20 years older than them coming into it last year. And so you have to approach conversations with a really open mind of, this person I'm speaking to might look different than what I consider an expert to be, but maybe they are actually an expert. Maybe they know something I don't. Maybe they've had experiences that I haven't. And I think that's something which isn't exclusive to Web3, but you come across people in the Web3 space more often than not that you're like, wow, okay, I wasn't expecting you to know as much about whatever subpart of the industry or this technical thing. And so you have to have that open mind that anyone can be an expert, anyone is willing to and excited about learning more. And as I say, you have to have that flexibility in kind of your approach because the industry changes super quickly.
Yeah, the markets are really 24/7, right? It's quite a crazy one. It definitely keeps us alive and sleeping well at night as well. And I really appreciate your insights from the side of like that you can have the like really young individuals around that you see, wow, you can really learn so much from them. And I really appreciate that side of the industry where there's not like this kind of bias for the older you are, the more experience you have or knowledge you have. It's like, well, everybody is kind of equal to a certain extent and everyone can, share their knowledge. And when you're going through all of these, we were speaking a little bit before about some of the conferences with all these like devs and those that are really kind of working on some of the projects. What would you say some of the best practices when running a blockchain-based project?
So definitely that flexibility to change. If you go in with, your Gantt chart for the next 3 months, in that time, you've potentially got brand new regulation that's come in. You only have to look back at the beginning of last month. So in August, there was the OFAC sanctioning of Tornado Cash. That changed the industry basically overnight. Suddenly a privacy orientated service, a mixer that you could have interacted with on, the week before, and it would have maybe thrown up some potential red flags by services. The next day, once it's sanctioned, you're potentially violating an international sanction. So huge difference overnight. If you were building a service that was going to interact with Tornado Cash, maybe you were rethinking that. So you have to have that flexibility. You can't just go in with a plan for 3 months in the future and think that it won't change. And that's the same with technology as well. Like, you can have a brand new template or smart contract essentially that's created of a token, and maybe that's what you were developing. Well, you might need to rethink, okay, you're going to be in competition, are you going to be in collaboration? And all these things are happening in public forums on the blockchain, so you have to be really plugged in to the world around you and the kind of crypto sphere, and then be willing, based on information, to potentially pivot, change direction, change approach, etc. So I think that's the biggest mentality shift, is you can't just kind of put head down, blinkers on, work on something in isolation. You have to have your head up, looking at the industry around you, how it's changing, other new ways of adoption that people are seeing, that you need to maybe rethink your go-to-market strategy. So whilst largely a lot of the traditional project management approaches will make sense, you don't have to completely rip up the rule book, but you definitely have to be looking around you much more than I think you could get away with in some of the more traditional industries.
Yeah, completely agree. The flexibility side of things and staying always alert. And I mean, that kind of takes me to the last question here is, I mean, how do you stay on top of all of this? I mean, it seems like, the market's 24/7, it's global, you need to be flexible, you need to see what other people are building. I mean, that seems like a lot for any human being. I mean, how do you yourself personally kind of stay on top of all of this, and how do you recommend that anyone else do so?
So it's definitely the $1 million question. I get asked it a lot, because I was like, whoa, but how do you know what's going on, and how do you stay so plugged in? And the answer really is that it isn't a 9 to 5 for me, and anyone in the industry, and any entrepreneurs actually in their industry, know that to have that level of knowledge about your own business, about the ecosystem around you, you can't just do a 9 to 5 with it. It becomes all consuming, in a good or a bad way, depending how you look at it. But, for instance, with me, before I've even got out of bed, I've probably read a crypto newsletter or two. I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I'm going to have like a podcast on in the background. I'm walking my dog, and I'm going to have another podcast on that I'm listening to, or a YouTube video open, listening to some kind of nerdy technical discussion. I'm cooking my dinner in the evening, and if I don't have some trashy TV on, again, I've probably got another video that's playing in the background. So it's kind of that all-encompassing living it. You have to be looking at the news sources. So I have a whole bunch of newsletters that I am subscribed to. So I get those into my email inbox. I think over time, what I've done is I've started to kind of curate that down. There's no, don't go out there and just sign up for 20 crypto newsletters. Like, spoiler, you will not end up reading them. You'll just delete them at the end of every day because they're clogging up your inbox. Like, pick 2, maybe 3 to get started with. I definitely have a mix as well of really pithy ones, which just give you a kind of headline and a summary, versus deeper dive ones. And so for that, like, TLDR newsletters great at just throwing in your quick read, but then you get something like Masari, which has really in-depth reporting. Now, you can't read like 5 Masari-esque newsletters in a day if you're also going to do other things, but sometimes you want that mix of a deeper dive versus a quicker one. So yeah, I think that's definitely key. Subscribe to some reading material, but a reasonable, doable amount. Find a couple of podcasts that you can listen to. I have kind of 3 really on rotation that I'm listening to. Any more than that, you also can't keep up unless you're spending your whole day listening to podcasts. Another one, though, I think for me is talking to people. So whether that's virtually in kind of Discord or Telegram, whether it's going to crypto meetups, there's so many around the world. I'm in London, and we have, which I always just find hilarious, we've got a couple of meetups that I'm been to, or kind of within the Telegram channels, and we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm yet to know if we have a Friday, but that's like one collection of people that have meetups nearly every day of the working week. And when you start adding into that all of the like Ethereum community meetups that are going on, or the nerdy Bitcoin meetups, or The specific ones about kind of DeFi farming, like there's so many groups that you can join. And again, don't oversubscribe yourself. Like don't go to crypto meetup, 5 days a week or 7 days a week, but getting one, just, dip your toe in once a month even. That kind of thing's really important. And I know when I've gone to meetups, I always come away going, oh, that was really interesting what that person said. I'm going to look into that, or I learned something new, or I made a new connection. And I think, I'm not saying all of this stuff is easy. Like I am low-key obsessed with crypto, but you need to make sure you've got all those different kind of touch points, but just make them reasonable, because otherwise day one, you'll subscribe to all these things. Day two, you'll be like, oh, that's too much. I can't do this.
Yeah, I totally see what you mean. It can become very quickly overwhelming, because there is so much to do and so much to look into. But I think, yeah, one of my ones is always like to not fear kind of going down that rabbit hole, because sometimes it can be overwhelming. But just learning about all these different things is just so inspiring, and it brings you that energy to want to kind of like dig deeper.
Exactly.
So,
And I
great.
think one of the misconceptions that people have is like, oh, wow, crypto's so complex. I can never learn it all. Therefore, like, I won't try, or I'm just kind of paralyzed by how much there is. No one knows everything. Like Vitalik knows loads about Ethereum, loads about Bitcoin as well. He started Bitcoin Magazine. But if you asked him what was going in maybe Litecoin, he might be able to give you the highlights, but I don't think he'd go into depth about LIP 006, which is being in development. I can, because I'm a nerd, but like everyone has their areas of specialty. Again, like DeFi for me, I know the high level. Do I know all the details? Definitely not. Like I've picked my kind of segments that I really deep dive into, and I try and keep a broad view of everything else. But I think a lot of people get scared because like I can never understand all this. No one understands it all. Like pick your area, focus on that, get to grips with that. Once you feel a little bit comfortable, broaden your circle a little bit more, try dipping your toes into, if you start in NFTs, maybe then start dipping your toes into like the Polkadot ecosystem and learning a bit about that. But I think all too often people just get scared by the breadth of it all and think they have to know everything, and you definitely don't.
Completely agree, Tara. Thank you so much for taking the time with us to share those incredible insights. Don't be afraid. Go and learn some more. There's so many incredible ways to do so. Thanks again, Tara, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
No worries. Thanks for having me.